and welcome to the Babylon Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to taking a look at the inner workings, discussions, and shenanigans involved with making one of the world's most powerful, beautiful, simple, and open web rendering engines, Babylon.js. My name is Jason Carter, also known as Pirate JC in the Babylon world, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, David Katui, also known as Delta Kosh. Hi, David. Good to see you again.
Hey,
and today we have
before you continue, I have one joke here. You are saying one of the most powerful whatever engine right at the opening.
Yes,
and so people on the forum right now use that against us. Like there are that guy that say, okay, you are one of the most, but why don't you have this feature if you are one of the most, right? And like you saying that, I was like, oh yeah, maybe we should change our intro to say one of the most. No, okay, we keep it this way. Okay, so
we keep it.
Continue.
And then people want more features, they can ask, and we will develop it for them when we can because we care. That's how it will go. I like it. That's good. It's almost like weaponizing.
Yeah, they are weaponizing our podcast. I love that.
I love it. That's so good. We have a very, very special guest today. Super excited to invite Pelle Johnsen here to join us, who is a community member. Forum name is Pijo.
Yes, yeah.
Pijo, and who has been active on the forum and has actually used Babylon to make an entire game, which I encourage you to check out the link to this in the description. It's incredible, and we are so excited to welcome you here today to talk about how you made the game, all kinds of different exciting things. So welcome officially to the Babylon Chronicles, Pelle.
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, and honestly, I was about to say, show that game to people without telling them it's a web game, okay? Because like it's definitely a league ahead from everything I saw already. Like it's so great. Man, you killed it.
Yeah, absolutely, you did for sure. Yeah, it's an incredibly successful, beautiful looking game. Very fun to play.
I actually had a former colleague take a look the other day, and he didn't realize. He was, "Oh, is that using some commercial proprietary engine?" But no, it was not.
That's great. Just open source. Why don't we start with this, actually? Maybe we can go back in your history just a little bit. Maybe you can kind of explain a little bit about your background and maybe the road to what led you to wanting to get involved with Babylon. I know you've been a part of the community for a long time. We actually met for the first time 6 years ago, I think, is what we were talking about earlier. And maybe just your background in computer graphics and software, how you got to Babylon and what made you want to make a game. Would love to hear that story.
Please.
I'll try to keep it short. Originally, I have a background as a software engineer, doing all kinds of different stuff. But I think back in around the early 2000s, I was developing a mobile game with a couple of friends, and it was a full-on RPG with multiple levels and spells and monsters and equipment, all this kind of things. We had a ton of fun doing it, but this was just when the first color phones came out, so it was a really limited platform. But unfortunately, the commercial side of it never really had any success. And I kind of realized that, at least at that time, for mobile games, we would have to instead do multiple smaller, simpler games, and that just wasn't what we wanted. So I started looking at other platforms, and I guess it was just before Xbox 360, around there, PlayStation 2, something. And I knew that other platforms meant 3D. So I thought, I have to figure out how that works. And luckily, I managed to find a local school for 3D artists. And I kind of went there for the intro day and, I'll sign up for a semester. And then I ended up taking a full degree as a 3D artist with the whole modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, lighting, and so on. I guess mostly focusing on the technical aspects. I'm not that artistic. But then from there, I kind of fell in love with this combination, looking for especially 3D on the web, and was involved in a project doing a online 3D model sharing service. And from there, I was starting to look into how can we do something more interactive. And then I came across Babylon, and then I was sold. No way of going back.
That's awesome.
Your soul, and you own it right now.
I love it. I love that you found it. And you said you had a passion for kind of dungeon games, right? Dungeon builder games. Is that kind of
Yeah,
like?
so maybe leading into the background for the game. I always liked RPGs, dungeon stuff, and kind of found it interesting. I think I all the way back played the original Rogue on the PC with ASCII graphics, and always been fascinating about how these could just procedurally generate more and more content. And I thought that could be fun to play with. And then I also have this thing with sci-fi. Also, big fan of like Halo and those kind of
Halo.
games.
I see what's on your shirt there.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's I actually bought whatever deluxe edition when it came out. That was also a good game back in the day.
For sure.
And then we have two kids, and they are playing all kinds of stuff, and both on PC and on iPad. And I thought it could be maybe fun to try and make something that they could also like, and maybe at some point down the line make it co-op so I could play it with them. Especially our boy, he really likes these kind of things. And then I just started. Really focusing on the procedural, and I was just starting to get into Blender's geometry nodes. So the first versions, I actually just you do a blueprint with just a very simple mesh for the floor plan, and then you use geometry nodes to create the walls and the floor and whatever. And that was a good start, but I kind of got to the point where when I wanted to do some, I guess, more complex things, it was very difficult to do with geometry nodes. Things that sound simple, like I had these special modules I would want to put at corners in the walls, but getting them oriented the right way, that took me forever to figure out. And then also I was looking at different algorithms for how to if you think of it more like a dungeon, that you would create rooms and figure out how to connect corridors and make sure that there's a good path all the way from the beginning to the final room of the level. And that's, for me, is just much easier to do in code. So I ended up, instead of just writing a setup where it's basically just a 2D grid it uses, and then it places rooms first, make sure they're not overlapping, and then it creates a graph for connecting the rooms. I think it's called a minimum spanning tree, so it makes sure all the rooms are connected. And then I tweaked it a little bit because I wanted sometimes that there could be loops as well, so it kind of goes back and sees is there some extra connections it could make. And then it has this grid, and then for that it's easy to put in instances for the different tiles, if you can call that, the 3D modules for floors and walls and so on. Did you
do this? So you started with geometry nodes in Blender, and then did you turn to Python scripts, or the coding part was in Babylon, and you had already decided on Babylon at this point?
Yeah, I kind of got to the point where I realized that for this I would prefer doing the actual algorithm for generating in code and
in JavaScript.
And I also, the other thing is I wanted to have it working runtime. You could use Python in Blender, but then it would be kind of asset creation time you would run it, right? I wanted the game to, when it was running, be able to create new levels.
That was the main motivation behind NGE for us, right? Like, because having a graph, no geometry at runtime for exactly this kind of game or moment, it's exactly the main motivator for us as well. Having code control over a procedural system at runtime and not at asset creation time.
And I should probably spend some more time with Babylon's node geometry. I've looked at it a little bit, but I actually for this it might make sense to, once I have the grid, then just create the floor mesh and then use geometry or node geometry to actually create the different modules and so on.
I mean, you're not wrong, though. The nice thing there that I actually really like about your journey, which it highlights, is there are tools that can be used for a number of different complexities. And at any point in time, if something feels like, hey, you want more control over it yourself, you can just jump over into the code of that thing. And what's relatable, I think, about that part of your story is you had tools that allowed you to do that very easily without having to write a code, almost prototyping out ideas. And then as you got to the part where you wanted to do more complex, finer control, you had the ability to do that as well. I think it goes to show you're the type of innovative person who will try lots of different tools to get to the right result, which is cool. Very cool.
And then maybe also worth mentioning in those tiles, I also have like colliders that when they load turns into physics shapes. I haven't tried or looked at, maybe that's also possible with node geometry, but maybe that's a separate step you would do afterwards. But it's for me, when I create the tiles in Blender, it's very nice that I can just create the collider boxes and I just give them a special named material. And then when I load things in, I find everything with that material and then turn that into box physics shapes.
I love this. Yeah. This will actually get even easier in the future because the GLTF physics extension, which is now in active development and is definition, will take care of that for you, right? So you can make those shapes, do everything in Blender, export the GLTF, and then just load it in Babylon, and we will read it and know which ones are the colliders. So the code that you wrote to connect your colliders, read the material name,
obsolete.
Exactly. Yeah, we take that part away from you, which will be very, very nice. David, were you going to say the same thing today?
No, I was about to mention for our listener that in the description of that file, there will be a link to the game anyway. So if you want to follow while watching the game itself, it's just interesting to see what it means in real life while you explain that at the basic, it's a 2D map and you extrude stuff. So when you watch it in live, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, you can listen to this while playing the game. Very, very true.
But yeah, maybe also just say I've had very good experience with Havoc, the physics engine.
Yes.
So far, whatever I've thrown at it, it's just eaten it up and just worked amazingly and performing very nicely.
Awesome. I love to hear that. I mean, obviously the Havoc team has been at this for decades and they know exactly what they're doing.
They're the best, right? So,
we're very, very fortunate to be able to say that we've been able to collaborate with them on a web port of a huge part of what they've built.
For free, right? Think about that. The engine used in Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom, the same physics engine is available for free for the Babylon users. Like, that's crazy to say, right?
Super nice.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty powerful. And a huge shout out to Havoc for basically giving some of their tech away for free to the world, some of the stuff that's taken them decades to perfect. So that's pretty incredible. So I was going to ask you that exact same thing. So you obviously used the Havoc engine for your physics, and that experience of defining the definition of your meshes and colliders in Blender, bringing them into Babylon, assigning the things to physics colliders with Havoc, that was a straightforward, joyful experience for you?
Yeah, I would say that the codes to actually figure out the right transforms for the physics shapes, depending on where in the hierarchy I had them and different parenting and so on. I spent some time getting that right, so I'll be happy when it becomes obsolete.
Yes, exactly, when it will be part of the GLTF file.
Yeah, that's incredible. Real quick, want to pivot us to a different discussion, which I am just so excited to talk about. We use this podcast to talk a lot in real time about the development of different AI models and their effect on software development, specifically as it applies to us as we develop Babylon.js. It's a reality that these models are in both the computer graphics space, right, in image generation and 3D model generation, but also in developing software as well, what LLMs can do, their code generation capabilities. But you, Pelle, have an incredible story that I cannot wait for the viewers to hear about leveraging AI to create characters, and you built a pipeline around this. But before we do, I want to reemphasize something you said earlier, which is you are self-described as not an artist, but you know enough to know what good art could look like and what
direct somehow.
And what you want in your head. Is that a fair assessment based on your self-description?
I know just about enough to get in trouble, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
But so exactly. So when I got this idea for the game, I was kind of what to do with the characters. And to be honest, original prototype, I just ripped some characters from a game just to get going. But I also knew that was not really going to hold up, so I had to find some kind of solution. I was kind of dreading, if I have to try and play character artist myself again, that's going to take forever, and probably quality will not be particularly good. And then I started looking into these 3D AI models. And it's, I guess, the last year or so, there's been a lot of stuff happening there.
Crazy, right.
And I tried different things, and the first ones I came across, they created some 3D, but it looked like I could probably have done better, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So after some different experimenting, I came across an open source model called Trellis. That's also a Microsoft project.
An open source project, yeah.
The nice thing for me with that particular model was that it gave me that extra control, that it was not just that you would give it a text and it would do 3D, or even that you gave it a single image, but it could take images from multiple angles. So I found out this workflow, if you will, where I could first use a 2D image AI to generate a full character sheet, like the normal process you would have some concept art, or then you would get this view with both the front and back and left view, side view, if you will, of a character. So I managed to find a setup where I can kind of control the 2D AI to always create these 3 views. It's basically, you start in Blender, and then you take some like a base mesh of a human and render out the depth channel of the front, back, left. And then you feed that into the 2D AI, so it tries to fit the image it generates into that depth map. And that makes it almost always, there are times when it hallucinates a bit too much, but almost always it will generate the character I'm prompting in those 3 views, front, back, left. And when I have that...
What tool did you use for this part?
So I used Comfy UI. That's also a graph-based thing for these image AIs. And then the model I used, I had best experience with is Flux. I'm sure there are others as well. I also, for some reason, I've had this thing that I really want to try and run these locally just on my laptop. And even though it's an okay laptop, it has limited VRAM, so it does kind of require that the models I run are pretty optimized. But this setup works fine, even locally. It's not fantastically fast, but it's still workable. And having that first step, it allows me to iterate quicker. I can kind of refine that the 2D image is what I want before I feed it into Trellis. And when I have these 3 different views, I feed it to Trellis, it behaves also pretty fantastic. If you haven't seen Trellis, what it basically does, it first generates some kind of video that's turn around from all angles, and then from there it generates this 3D mesh.
But that model is not skin or rigged, right? You still have to rig it?
Yeah, so I would say that the mesh is generally pretty good quality. Texture is sort of okay, still some room for improvement. So after it comes out of Trellis, I still do some post-processing, if you will. So normally I would generate it in quite high resolution, and then I would remesh it. I've tried some different automatic tools, and some of them are better than others. Some things you can just tweak the right settings in Blender and get something manageable. And then I usually also do a pass of cleaning up the UVs, and then I bake in Blender from the high poly to the low poly. Then I end up with a sort of game-ready asset, if you will. And then for rigging animation, I want to work quickly, so I've just fed it into Mixamo. It's pretty quick to click here, the different joints, and then it's rigged, and then there's a whole bunch of animations you can pick, and then loading that into Babylon works quite well.
I saw several new AI models coming to Blender where they do the rigging for you based on just nothing, like just on the interpretation of the AI of, oh, this is a horse, let me rig that for you. I saw a demo recently on YouTube. I was like, oh my gosh, if it works that way, you just drop the character and done.
These are new plugins?
Yes, coming. I don't know if they're yet on the market, but they are getting closer, like model, 2D, 3D, and now rigging, and then you have the full pipeline ready to be just automated.
That's incredible. So, sorry, Pelle, is there more? Keep going. If there's more to your pipeline.
I was just saying that sounds really interesting, especially if it can also do non-bipeds, like you said, a horse.
I saw with horses and like centaurs. Like centaurs, interesting, right? Up body, it's human, and the back is like a horse, like, and that works.
Wow.
Because if you're thinking more like a classic RPG with all kinds of monsters with I don't know how many legs and so on, then Mixer Mode doesn't quite cut it because it's mostly biped animations, right? So
what I absolutely adore about this pipeline that you've created, this thing, is it has a spirit of innovation to it where you're like, hey, I want to be able to create characters for the game. Maybe you're not the best character artist in the world. It would take you a long time to do it. So what do? You cobble together a bunch of different tools to create this little pipeline for yourself to be able to get something that you can then use in your game. Like the ingenuity in that. Like I hope the listeners at home can really like hear this. It's incredible. So let me spit it back to you, make sure I've understood it. So you use tools to be able to generate image generation tools to create a front, side, back, and top view of the character.
Just front, back, left is for characters at least what works.
Character sheet from
Okay, and then you Trellis is one of the unique advantages to using Trellis is it does have image input, and it also has multi-image input. Yeah. So you can take the front, side, and back view of a character, pipe that into Trellis. It gives you a model. I've played with it a lot. The UVs are something left to be desired. And so there is a human step, but you know that step where you can get in and tweak it a little bit to get to kind of like the final result that you want. But you're coming out of image generation into Trellis to have something in three-dimensional space that you can work with. And then there's that in and of itself is incredible. And then there's this extra complexity of like, but I need to animate that and get that into my game. And so you bring that into Mixamo, which if people haven't heard of that, it's a product from Adobe that's an incredibly free product to use, incredibly fun to use. You can drag in any 3D creation, and they have an auto rigging feature where you can show where the knees and elbows and root joints are and stuff, and it will rig it. And then they have a library of animations that can be applied to that. And so you can then export that, get a whole suite of game-ready assets on a character you design. So Pelle, I think there's just brilliance in the innovation of stringing these things together, and you can see the results in the game. It looks incredible.
Yeah, but sometimes also when it's a like personal side project, if you will, you don't have too much time to work on it, so you have to find ways of getting things done quickly and easily.
Too much time or too much money, right? Even if it's a professional and you're a small studio with 2 engineers and no one to do the UI, right, and the 3D assets. Yeah, it's a great tool, right?
For sure. Yeah, that's an incredibly inspiring story to hear. I love the innovation of that. It's awesome. What has been, would you say, the greatest challenge of using Babylon, and what's been your favorite thing about using Babylon? And be brutally honest. We want to hear.
I'm taking notes right now.
Yes, okay. We want to hear the truth.
First of all, the foundation of the engine is really sound. It's well, at least also from me coming from doing a lot of other development with TypeScript. It's just a natural place to go. And also, I've dabbled in a number of other languages, but for me, I've come back to TypeScript because that's where I feel most productive. And some of it is like the tooling and so on, but also the iteration speed, especially with these modern like front-end bundlers and so on. You do a change, you save, and then you see it in seconds running, right? So the other thing we want to say about Babylon, the community is amazing. You really done something right there. From having all communication basically centralized in the forum that you can always ask there, you can always search there, and the response times, at least from my experience, is amazing. Sometimes, other places there's a forum, you think, oh, if I write here, will I ever hear back? But that's not been the case, at least for me. So that's fantastic. Then I guess we can dig into this area that's maybe a bit more controversial, the editor or not, or inspector, these sub-editors, if you will.
David, cover your ears.
I think I've had cases where I've had other like game artists or game developers who are used to some of the other proprietary engines where it's a full package editor, and I've kind of tried to sell them on Babylon, and they always say, oh, that looks interesting, until they get to use it and it's like, oh, but I have to code and I just want to put in my assets and drag them around. And I would say in this project that hasn't been an issue because I'm kind of procedurally generating most of the stuff from code, right?
Code. Of course.
But I have had a lot of use of the inspector. That is just an amazing thing for debugging.
Good news, we are writing the V2.
And especially mostly in Babylon projects, I actually set it up even on production that you can dynamically load it. So it doesn't really take up anything in your normal bundle size. But when you have that need to understand, oh, why is that thing flying around there where it's not supposed to be, and then you can go and see the hierarchy and figure out, oh, it's parents transform that's not doing it right or something, right? That is just invaluable. And I've also have good fun of some artistic, if you will, tweaks like post-processing. What exactly should the exposure be? It's just nice to try and inspector and play with it and find a good value. I think even for this, I made a custom hook into the inspector so I can tweak the post-processing settings, and then I can just click save, and then it generates a JSON I just put into my code, and then next time it loads, it will use those settings. So that's a quite nice workflow.
We have a good news for you and our viewers. Our next version, the Inspector V2, will completely be customizable with a central repository where you can have extension and add-ons. So you will be able to do that in a far simpler way, and even share that with others if you have a plugin that can be then used by other people.
That sounds great.
Yeah, the idea of allowing people to easily develop for the inspector and then share those extendable features with others is a key thing that we're chasing with this idea for rewriting the inspector. When we say rewrite, we want the same functionality, of course. We just want it to be faster, more performant. We want it to be
easier to import.
Yeah. So there's a host of things, which is coming. I don't want to let you off the hook, though. I do want to come back to your opinion of the greatest need of the platform is an editor. And I actually want to hit this. We talk about this very transparently with the community about what do people need? And I think that is a very, very valuable perspective, that a lot of game engines out there offer a way to set up environments and scenes and even get running without writing a lot of code. It's interesting. Our philosophy on this is always evolving, but there's a root part of it that stayed relatively true, which is Babylon.js is a developer platform. It's a web library for developers to easily access the GPU. And slowly over time, we're adding more API features, helper functions, bits of tooling to make that easier and easier and easier to use. And our appetite for that, making it easier to use, is only growing. Will that result in us making an editor one day? Probably not till David retires. But will it?
Yeah, you can blame me. I am the one blocking the editor.
I think I'll just add that it's an editor is great, but if the foundation, the framework itself, is not good enough, then whatever amazing editor you have, that doesn't really help. Right? You need to have the underlying structure, the framework itself, be great.
Yeah, and that's what we've prioritized with, we're a small team. Like you look at something like Unity or Unreal and they have hundreds of developers building the engine and developing it every year. And, we have a team size of about 15. And so we have to really prioritize like where do we want most of our attention to go. However, that doesn't negate the fact that the community has asked us for years, like, how do we make Babylon effectively more easy to use? What they ask is, can we have an editor? But I think the ask behind it is, can I drag my assets in? Can I iterate faster in my art pipeline between a DCC tool like Blender and Babylon? And these things we analyze and talk about a lot. And the community needs to hear that these are not things that are being ignored. They're things that we talk about constantly. How can we make it easier with the resources we have? And I think over time, we'll get closer and closer and closer to a set of tools that will feel more editor-like, even if you don't consider them an editor. A good example of this is this past release with Babylon 8, we introduced something called FlowGraph. We didn't advertise it a ton because it's a pretty technical system that allows for you to hook up scene logic with a series of nodes. But where we think this is really going to shine is actually something we're developing for this year with Babylon 9 called the FlowGraph editor. If you're a Unity user, you might be familiar with something like Playmaker, or if you're an Unreal, there's something called Blueprints. Yeah. Yes. And so these are tools that allow you to take non-destructive node trees, kind of like Node Material Editor, Node Geometry Editor for Babylon. But this time you can hook up scene logic. And so it's kind of a visual editor, so to speak, or hooking up actions. And so you can create interactivity in a Babylon scene without having to write any code. And that's something that we're actively working on now and hope to release this year, assuming things go well for us. And so that's an example of where I think our philosophy has been, as you put it, a core foundational layer that is rock solid at all times. And that's where our priority goes. But over time, we add layers of tooling onto it that hopefully over time will build into something that feels more and more and more like an editor.
And if you think about the Inspector V2, in my mind, that's probably the very first big milestone towards that goal, right? Like having a central UI-based environment that can live within our tools and within customers' tools, like in Pelle example here, where we can add more plugins to do more stuff. And at some point, the inspector will be central for launching NME, NGE, the flow graph, the render graph. We will be able maybe to drag and drop stuff into it. And we will coalesce into being an editor without having the full-fledged editor that we need to maintain, that people will have extremely high expectation. That's the reason why I'm blocking it, right? Like, it's because I don't think we can compete with people like Unreal or Unity, and people will be disappointed, right? So we need to go cautiously.
But it's an interesting topic. A while back, I had this kind of thought that what would the ideal editor be like? Well, like I want my 3D view and so on, but I also need to edit code, right? So what's a good code editor? Well, VS Code is pretty nice. Mm-hmm. What if instead of having that separate, if the other 3D stuff was also inside that sort of framework? So I started digging into coding VS Code extensions. And I did something simple like loading a GLTF scene and enabling the inspector and so on. It's interesting. But then I also started thinking, if we go back to the whole AI thing, that maybe going forward, the writing the code thing becomes less and less important. I've tried other code AIs today that can basically generate a whole front-end application for you. So maybe there's also some kind of thing in between where the code becomes less important for the actual users of the engine. But let's see.
We'll see. Exactly right.
And that's very insightful, though. I mean, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, there is a high likelihood that in the next 5 years, the job of a software developer will change from a software coder into a software designer, where your job is not writing the code, but it's architecting or directing the code, for lack of a better word. And I'm sure we'll come up with better terms than I have, but the job will change. You're right. It's probably an inevitability.
The job changed 10 times in the past 30 years already, right? Again, when we were writing assembly code, writing a string on the on the screen was a nightmare. Like it was several lines of code. Then we moved to C, and printf was there, right, or cout, and like one line of code. So we were already directing and designing more than just implementing. And I think AI, it's the next move, right? We're gonna abstract again.
Yeah, it keeps evolving. I can't. When you say that, I can't help remembering when I originally started coding as a teenager or something. It was assembly code, but not with a sampler, just with the hex numbers, and you had to kind of remember, load accumulator, that's 7D or something. Different from what we do today.
Yeah, right.
For
Think
sure.
about that. Like writing what we are doing today with assembly would be like just impossible.
So I'd love to ask this question, and I'm going to put you totally on the spot here, but what's next? So you've made SciFiRogue. I assume you have a vision for it. You built it to play it with your son. Do you want to take it further? Is this a done thing and you've got a new project in mind?
When can we buy it on Steam? When can I buy it on Steam, please?
I think at one point I was kind of considering, then you could do some kind of freemium model, and then you could pay to get upgraded armor or weapons or other abilities or something. But I think for me it's more turned out like a research, having fun project. So I think for now at least I want to keep it there. I guess the next big thing I'm gonna look at is the multiplayer, the co-op. I have actually done some stuff in that space before with Babylon as well. With the whole when you look into multiplayer, the tricky part is always that you have a server and a client, and they are running this game, but they are out of sync in sort of time because of the network delay. So you kind of have to deal with that. But I've had before been able to run the Babylon with physics on both the client and the server, and then synchronize them and have the client, we call it predict before it has the result from the server, and then when something comes in from the server, it kind of have to reconciliate that I think you were here, but the server says you were here. Okay, I need to match that up somehow. So I kind of have a good plan in my head for how to get that going, but it does require some time. So I kind of had to take it in small steps. But I'm also looking to do it more like a peer-to-peer, so it's not like you have to you don't have to have pay for some kind of dedicated server to actually run it, but you can just invite your friend, and then one of you is actually hosting, if you will, and the other one just joins, so we're participate. So
cool, it's fantastic. Can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, you're going to have to keep us definitely posted on the forum. If you're listening to this, go check out SciFiRogue.com. The link for that will be in the description wherever you're listening to the podcast. Incredibly amazing looking game, all running on Babylon. It really does look and feel and very professional.
Modern,
and just to hear the story of here is dad doing a hobby project to play a game, with his son, and it's procedural in nature, and it has that. It really does tap into that kind of like dungeon corridor room kind of feel, and
Dungeon Master, yes, definitely.
Yeah, it does. It has that vibe for sure, and it's an incredible accomplishment, Pelle. You should be really, really proud.
Congratulations!
I hope you guys like it. It's been a lot of fun to develop, and I'll keep going.
Yeah, please do. And also going to encourage anybody who's interested in hearing more about it to reach out to Pijo on the forum and ask questions. We'll probably start a little chat thread on there just to kind of, I know there are several for SciFiRogue, but we'll put the podcast link up there and people can ask more questions about it.
I heard there is a beta cosh.
That is
right?
That is probably, I'll probably add that before I start the network stuff.
I love that. That's good.
We need some more challenging enemies.
Okay.
Yeah, all it does is throw editors at people. Here, you have an editor. You have an editor. You have an editor.
And then there's Delta Cosh coming and they shoot them down.
That's right. Well, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for listening. Pelle, a huge shout out to you for the incredible work you've done, for joining us on the podcast. Feel your passion and excitement for the Babylon community, for the platform, and it goes right back at you, man. We are so thankful to have you as a part of the community, and to see what you're doing with the engine just brings us, honestly, a ton of joy.
Agreed.
So really, really love it. So thanks for joining us, and everybody go check out SciFiRogue.com, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and
Cheers.
keep up the amazing work with the engine.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thanks, Pelle. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye.